Act upon proposal to address issues with water distribution system and newly constructed elevated storage tank.
I would move we accept Hibbs and Todd's recommendations for remediation to our water system with the final details of the contract to be worked out between their council, our council, and the city manager.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll now move to item 4D, which is discuss, consider, and act upon compensation of election workers and the appointment of election judge, alternate judge, and early
Sage,
voting.
thank you.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you,
We
sir.
may step out, that's all right.
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
Thank you. For the special election to be held on November the 6th, 2018, to propose amendments to the City of Sweetwater's Home Rule Charter. Any questions?
I move we approve the election judges and the compensation packages proposed. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll now move to item 4E, which is discuss, consider, and act upon resolution establishing a central counting system, station for the November 6th election, authorizing the election equipment to be utilized at the CCS, and early voting and appointment of the CCS manager, tabulation supervisor, and judge.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll now read the resolution into the record. A resolution establishing the central counting station for the City of Sweetwater, Texas. Now move to item 4F, which is discuss, consider, and act upon resolution ratifying the Civil Service Commission's approval of the revised Sweetwater Fire Department and Ambulance Service Procedures and Policy Manual. Any questions of Lisa or Chief Grant?
Well, that is one big document. I guess you have it memorized?
Every word,
Took 3 days to read it.
yes.
Will new hires have to read the entire document?
I'm sorry.
Will new hires have to read the entire?
The way it's set up, and I am not, I have it right here. Here it is. You get it on your phone, and every time we push out a new policy, they have to acknowledge it. And you can acknowledge policies right here. You sit here, and at the bottom of it, it says, you have read this, you understand this. By pressing I accept, you understand this policy. Then during the normal, once we get it activated and going, they'll have what's called DTBs, or daily training briefings. And 10 times a month, they'll have to log in and do a little training briefing over one specific policy.
Okay.
But yes, to accept all of the policies, they say that they have read every single word of every single policy. And so far, we have very high compliance.
Is that kind of like the software agreements?
That's what I was
not.
thinking, Larry.
I hope not.
I agree.
Yeah, whatever. Just check it. I hope not. A lot of work went into this. I assume y'all got the
Yes.
emails that I sent
Yeah.
out. We've
Yes.
had meetings of my lieutenants and I for months and months and months, and gone over each and every policy and made sure that it fit within our operational capabilities and that it was stuff that we agreed on. We changed about 5% of it. Out of the 95% of it is exactly like it came out of the can. So
A very, very comprehensive policy.
we've actually found a few things that it doesn't cover, but not very much. It's certainly a much better. It reduces the liability on the city a lot, because it does lay out specific policies and procedures on how things are supposed to happen that we've not had in the past.
Have we had policies like this before?
Very small.
I don't remember ever seeing
section.
this on an agenda before.
You wouldn't. They were already there, and we would just fix little bits and pieces of them. The Texas Commission on Fire Protection would come in and say, we've got to have an updated policy on 2 in, 2 out, on the PPE that we've had, that how we clean it because of all the new cancer stuff that's coming out about firemen. Those are the last ones that I've really updated, because Texas Commission on Fire Protection came in and said, you've got to change these, and these are the templates we want you to use, and here's how it goes. Next is the Department of State Health Services. They have also started throwing their changes that they want to see in the ring. One of the big ones that's costing us the most headache is the FDA said that they want the drugs kept at a very specific temperature. So our bags of saline that we've kept in the trucks, in the bays, they want them kept between 70 and 77 degrees. Well, that's not real easy. This new ambulance that we've ordered has a box refrigerator. It keeps the passenger compartment and or the patient compartment to a certain temperature all the time. You just plug it in the bay, and it runs electrically that way without the truck having to run it. So, because of that new mandate. And we're looking at putting rooftop air conditioners on the 2 trucks that we're keeping in the new budget cycle so we can meet that new standard. It's just all fun and
Grant,
games.
how much time did you and your guys spend on this?
A long time. It was probably 4 months that we had meetings, and we would have meetings maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and each meeting was probably 4 or 5 hours. And then they would go and read over the policies and get input from their guys. Their guys would come to me or go to them and work it over and say, hey, I don't agree with that part. We'd sit down and discuss it. Sometimes we'd keep it, sometimes we'd change it, sometimes we'd completely turn it into something else. But we've spent a long time working on this. And it should shoe right into, like, the police have their best practice program, the fire department's best practice program, because a lot of this, well, all of it's either state standards, federal standards, or the Texas Fire Chiefs Association best practice program is where all of this comes from, through many, many attorneys.
Well, I congratulate you on drawing this policy up.
Thank you.
I would move we approve the procedure and policy manual. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the resolution into the record. A resolution approving the City of Sweetwater Fire Department and Ambulance Service Policy and Procedure Manual. Now move to item 4G, which is the second and final reading of an ordinance to adopt the 2018-19 budget. Any discussion?
Move adoption of the budget.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Now read the ordinance into the record. An ordinance approving and adopting a budget for the City of Sweetwater for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019. Now move to item 4H, which is the second and final reading of the appropriations ordinance for the 2018-19 budget. Any questions of Patty?
I move we approve the ordinance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the ordinance into the record. An ordinance making appropriations for the support for the city government for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019. Now move to item 4I, which is the second and final reading of an ordinance amending the 2017-2018 budget. Any questions of Patty?
Move adoption of the ordinance amending the 2017-2018 budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the ordinance into the record. An ordinance amending the ordinance approving and adopting a budget for the City of Sweetwater for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2018. Now move to item 4J, which is a public hearing for the proposed tax rate of .497423 cents per $100 evaluation of tax year 2018. Do I have a motion for a public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak for or against?
Move we close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any questions for Patty? Ask for a motion from the commission to approve the first reading of the ordinance fixing and levying a tax per the property tax code that requires language for the motion to be made is I move that the property tax rate be increased by a portion of the tax rate of .497423, which is effectively a 1.31% increase in the tax rate.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.497423, which is effectively a 1.31% increase in the tax rate.
Could you read that out in decimal form?
There's my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the ordinance into the record. An ordinance fixing and levying a tax for the tax year 2018 upon all city properties within the incorporated limits of the city of Sweetwater, Texas. Now move to item 4K, which is consider and approve the fiscal year ending 2019 budget for Sweetwater Enterprise for Economic Development Municipal Development District, SEED MDD, as passed by the Board of Directors at their August 2018 meeting. Now turn it over to Mr. Becker.
If you'd like, you can just continue on the roll and just reality is, I probably would rather not have that happen because I think we have some really exciting things to talk about. I'm gonna try to keep this simple and make sure I got this right. There we go. For one, we had in early August, we had a board retreat to discuss a lot of things that are going in, but that wasn't just the first time we've thought about this. Ever since going back when MDD was being talked about, we started looking at, what can we do differently and what would be some of those projects to look at. And one of the things I ask our board of directors to look at is not focusing in on just the next 12 months, because as we change something this drastic, we really need to be looking at the next 18 to 24 months in our start process, because some of this stuff will probably take longer than we expect it to, and some of it may actually happen faster than we think it would. So I think our board of directors, as they've done in the past, you guys appoint them. I think they've been very good stewards of the finances that our community has allowed us to have through the tax rate, sales tax. So we're going to talk about some of these major items that would be different than what normally would happen on one of our budgets. So here's some of those proposed projects that would be outside of economic development of what we would have done on a type A. And I think one of the things that's real important is that our board of directors, when we had our retreat, wanted to make sure that economic development was still the top thing that we did, that return on investment and those type of things, but with quality of life and how that affects our economic development efforts is becoming much more impactful, and the fact that our community has spoke. I mean, when we had these elections, it was about a 75 to 25 positive election, so I mean, that kind of tells us that our community was looking to do some things differently. So what we've got here is, if you just kind of look at the list, and I'm sure you've looked at those before, and let me kind of take each one individually. The dog park. If you look at that map right there, I know that we were looking at getting our community involved. I know there was a grant request to the State Farm. We did check with Richard, and Sweetwater's grant request did not make it to the final reading, so it got dropped off. And I think our SEED board of directors said, well, let's take a look at this, and let's look at this as a phase one. Let's get the basic part of this thing done. Let's get this thing operational. And then as we move forward, assuming you would approve this, then we'll look at our community and try to get them in phases 2, 3, or whatever it might be to add some of the more popular amenities that maybe this basic phase one wouldn't do. And they've already got the location picked out. If you have any direct questions on the dog park itself, I'm not the person to do that, I'll be honest with you. I'm not gonna be out there digging the post holes and all that good stuff. I think our city staff, Russell, is gonna kind of oversee that project, but we just think it's one of those things that to make some really visual changes, some of the things that we have on our deal would be very visual for our community and help them understand that we're not just talking about things, we're actually trying to take steps and make things happen. And I think this is just one of the many things that we'll talk about. Do you have any questions for Russell concerning this dog park? Russell, do you have anything you want to add to him? I think we had talked about, should this be approved, we'd probably be looking at it sometime this winter, maybe December, or starting to get that done, possibly operational coming up sometime in the spring. And one of the things we're also going to do in part of our marketing budget is that we intend to actually have some sign made that talks about the Sweetwater Economic Development actually is participating in some of these events, so we'll have those at some of the different things just to get that better visual that we listen to the community voters and we're acting on that. All right, if we go to the next one. Splash pads. This one is actually out of Redbud over in Abilene. I was at a softball tournament for my granddaughters and just happened to see this, so I went over and took a look at it. In the near future, David's working with us, gonna set up a tour of the group in Abilene and go through some of these and the operational side. Each one's a little bit different. There are several companies out there. I've already got one of the companies sent me a big book that has all their information in it. And our board felt pretty strong about this, that at this point they're asking for $750,000 to do that. That could be one or that could be two. And I also think that since we really don't know all the details of this, part of the important part of having this budget is that we may not spend every dollar that's in that budget. What we think we need is to have the commitment of our community that we are gonna try to make these things happen. And if by chance we go out there and get engineers to look at it and said, to do 2 nice parks is gonna be $900,000, I think that I feel very comfortable going back to my board of directors, asking for an increase in that. And then if they did that, we would come back to the city to ask for that increase. So I think that's a potential really positive thing that would be another very visual thing for our community in answering those questions. Here's just a couple pictures of what those look like. This is actually a smaller one that was over at Redbud. There's a lot of kids out there. I like the covers that they have for the parents to be able to sit out there and watch their kids.
Are these things fenced off?
No, they're completely open.
How do they handle vandalism?
I don't know if Dave, do you know anything about that?
There's, the on-off is on a timer. So it'll come on in the morning, come off by sunset. But as far as vandalism goes, we would look to increase police presence out there and build them in areas that are more open and that there's a less likelihood of vandalism. Of course, anything is possible. So we just have to take all that into consideration when determining
Appropriate
where to
lighting.
build them. Yes, sir.
Appropriate
Lighting
lighting
and those
also
kinds
would
of
make
things
make a huge difference.
as well. Yes, sir. We'll determine all that in upcoming meetings. Yes, sir.
So at this time, you don't have a proposed location?
No, in fact, what we'll be doing is really talking with Russell and Eddie about the availability of space and also availability of water and all those type of things there. So we'll be looking at that. And then I'm sure whatever company we end up going with will have recommendations on where it makes sense and where it doesn't make sense. We're not by far the experts, but Abilene has 6 or 7 right now, I believe. So going over to meet with them, touring what they already have, touring their maintenance policies and some of those type of things will really help benefit us, I think, greatly as we move forward. Here's just a couple more pictures. Of course, the screened-in areas where all the equipment's at, so it's all above ground, easy to get to. Then they have a number of signs all the way around it that talk about when it's open, the guidelines, and so on. Oops, go back one. Any questions? Any other questions on these splash pads?
How much water do they use?
Again, I do not know that, sir.
Most of it's recycled, isn't it?
Yes.
It is upwards of 95% recycled. If I remember right, the 3,000 square foot one that was first built in Abilene, I want to say for the season used less than 10 million gallons of water for a 5-month period. So it's minimal when you compare it to kind of the overall water usage for the city.
What's the city liability with regard to E. coli staff with recycled water? Is it heavily chlorinated in the recycling process, or is it this?
I do not have information on that. We're just in the early stages of getting,
I can elaborate.
Okay,
on that.
thank you.
Your splash pads are gonna be the same as almost as your swimming pool. You will have a disinfection system, and the splash pads also require a UV system, which that does aid. That's the disinfection system. So it's gonna be almost like your swimming pool, where you're chlorinating it, and you've got the UV protection as well. So that be minimal liability on that. As long as we're keeping that chlorine level there.
Right, okay, thank you, Marshall.
Any other questions that I can't answer? Well, that's why we'll be relying on the experts.
Will SEED be doing the maintenance and upkeep on these, or does that fall back upon the city?
They'll fall back on the city. no other questions, we'll move to the next one. Housing development. And we know that that is a pretty big number that we're looking at. We do not have guidelines in place. We're in the process of starting to work on that. It is something that was talked a lot about during the MDD election, and we're starting to visit, and there's a number of communities in the state that will have those plans that they've already got in place. So we'll be going out to reach out to some of those. I've already met with one builder in Abilene that has some desire to come here. One of our bank presidents also knows a developer in Abilene that has some desire to look at Sweetwater as a possible location. So we're going to be looking at that. So it's not that we're asking to spend $1 million this first year. What we're asking for is the opportunity to have that available if we put together a great program and the right developer comes in to be able to do something, whether it's infrastructure or whatever it might be to help that situation, that we have that available. And again, we can only spend up to $15,000 without coming back to the city council for final approval anyway. So it's just giving us kind of some legs in a budget that allows us to go out and start working towards some positive impacts.
Ken, those are items such as street, curb and gutter, water, sewer, utilities, those kinds of things
Yes,
that
sir.
developers would look for.
Yeah, we're not going to build a house for anybody
Yeah,
or anything like
right.
that.
It's all infrastructure.
But, you know, and we've talked about it a lot before. I think, you know, Sweetwater has so many positive things going for us. And I really believe that the quality of life side is, it's a set of dominoes setting up, and nobody's knocked over the first domino. I just think that CDMDD has that opportunity to maybe help push that first one over. And once you see that, I think you're gonna see a lot of local investment happen by itself without the involvement of the government. But sometimes it takes someone like us to be able to step up to the plate and say that we believe in it so much that we're willing to put some money towards it, and then all of a sudden the community will fall in. All right. We're also looking at a facade program. This is something that's been done all over the state of Texas by a lot of different groups. Again, we have an actual guideline that haven't been approved yet. We're waiting to find out whether there'll be any money budgeted for that. But Larissa, luckily before she left, actually went out there and found about 5 or 6 different facade programs where they would come in, and our proposal is to go up to a $30,000 project max, at least that we'd be involved with, and we would do 15,000 of that. It also has to come through the city. They have to get the building permits. They have to follow all guidelines before, and the city is actually allowing that person to come in here under this program to get their building permit free of charge, but still has to follow every other process. And we hope that that would help our downtown area, and we're actually looking at this first year of just including the 9 blocks downtown to really target an area there that can help with that. And along with that, on the side of that, is our new bank president, Joseph Crouch, came from Sulphur Springs, and they're a town of about 15,000 population. They had a small downtown that just wasn't very active, and they did a really concentrated effort in their downtown area with local leadership to do some changes. So we're in the process now. He's going to set up some meetings where we'll take a group from the county, the city, economic development, and the chamber out there and actually do a tour of their downtown, plus meet with the business leaders that actually made some of those things happen to try to see how we could start revitalizing our downtown. So I think that fits very well with this facade program of trying to increase that and improve that downtown area. We're already starting to see some of that. In fact, this last Saturday night, they had a street dance downtown that Argos had put on. We're starting to see more and more of that, and it's just great to see people in our downtown area.
Ken, where are the 9 blocks you're talking about?
It's basically, if you take the courthouse as the center, you have a total of 3 blocks wide and 3 blocks deep. So you go
Okay.
from the railroad tracks to the 5th Street, or 4th Street, I guess it is, and kind of there. And we think that would like to expand on that in future times, see how this first one go. We just felt that that first initial impact, if we're gonna try to do some downtown stuff anyways, that fits really well together and not try to spread it out too much in the opening year. No questions on that. Next is the substandard structure. You know, we've worked with Texas Communities Group, and I think they're doing a great job getting the information out there. They got them projects online. They've put signs out. We've seen a lot of stuff there. But we think that it's time to take that even a step further, and having some funds available that allow us to come in and actually have some of those properties taken down, whether we hire a contractor or a local group, whoever that might be. I think we're still looking into that, but, you know, at some point you have to tear down the building, then you have to take that materials and put it into containers and take it someplace. And I think one of the concerns we have of using the landfills here is that when there's a tonnage, and I hope you don't ask for the details of this, but there's a tonnage limit that you can put in each month, and we want to make sure that because of the way it's licensed, we want to make sure we don't go over that. So we'd be looking at least in the initial stages of probably contracting an outside group to come in, tear down the house, put it into a vehicle, and then have it taken to another location. Any questions on that? And then I think and this was just another one, that's actually fixer-upper, Jared, if you'd like to maybe invest in this one before they get completely tore down. But I think that fits very well. And that was another thing that was talked a lot about during the MDD election, is how can we do a better job of cleaning up our community. And I think Texas Community Groups was step one. I think that's a big step. I think this would be another opportunity to actually start seeing some very visual things. And then come in, we're open. We have one of our board members, a smaller entrepreneur, and really wanted to talk about, you know, if you look over the last 15, 20 years, Seed have been really fortunate, and sometimes you would call it lucky, that we brought in a number of pretty good sized companies. And honestly, that's not the norm for a smaller community to have happen. What that does is sometimes get us in a mindset of only looking to bring in bigger companies. And through one of our new board members, and that's what's great about having these new board members come on is what are we doing for the smaller mom and pop? Well, this is an opportunity to have a guideline put in that allows much lesser funds, but someone that maybe opening up a small business or ready to expand. And if you think about it, if you have facade grant program and this, you have an opportunity to really help someone come in and take care of a nice building that maybe needs some repair and start that business that would really expand those quality of life issues that we have. Because one of the things that when you talk about quality of life, you know, it's hard to explain it, because I bet if I ask you, the six of you, what quality of life means, it wouldn't all be the same. Each one of you is going to have a little bit different opinion. Maybe the top 3 or 4 or 5 things might be, but there'll be some other things. So retail shopping opportunities is one of the things that continues to come up. So we think this is just another opportunity for us to look at doing that. So what we're looking at in our overall budget, and we know that it is quite a bit more than what we've had in the past, we believe that this basically is giving us a license to go out there and explore what we can do. And should this budget get passed, I truly believe that we'll either have in place or at least partially being built within 1 year of when the election was passed back in May, that some of this stuff will be on the ground actually being ready to be used. And I think that's what our community is asking for, is doing things like that, and not, you know, getting in a room and just starting to talk about, well, what if we did this? Well, I think we're at the point now, the what if is we're ready to do it. We just need to have a budget and some funds to be able to do that. Any more questions?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ken, I guess I
Yes,
did have
sir.
one comment. I guess it does kind of concern me that, you know, the budget has a $2.6 million deficit. If we keep doing that, we're gonna deplete the fund balance of Seed completely, and Seed will not have the ability to get involved in some of the bigger economic development companies that we're trying to attract. So I guess that's a real concern of mine, that we're setting the precedent to deplete the fund balance of Seed.
Well, you know, from our point, again, we don't think this is setting a precedent. Honestly, we truly looking at this as more of a 18-month to 2-year project. But I think the community has spoken. They've kind of told us some of the things that they'd like to see. We don't at this point in time, and I can't speak for 5 years from now, but at this point in time, the funds we have will take care of every project that we've worked on or been able to work on over the last at least 11 years that I've been here. And the nice thing is that as our sales taxes continue to increase, each year we have additional funds that will come into that. And we've just been very fortunate over the last 10, 15 years that we haven't had to dig into that because we've been very good stewards. And I do want to pat our board of directors on the back that they've been very good stewards. We've only given funds when they were needed. And there have been times we could have given funds to bring companies in, but they were able to come in without funds. And I think that's a good way to do that.
In your planning, did y'all discuss what you're gonna be doing next year? Again, I guess I'm just concerned about depleting the fund balance. What do you anticipate budgeting for projects next year? Are you gonna continue to have a deficit? Are you gonna try to break even, or
You know, I'm the staff person, I'm not the board of directors, but we really truly looked at this as more of an 18-month to 2-year, because we know that, for instance, housing is not something that we can just start tomorrow and get something done. Even the splash pads are probably gonna take longer than we expect them to do. So I think we'll be looking at over time, and then I think as the community and as the city commission directs, I think that'll be what our board will be looking at. And if we have a message sent back saying we need to tone it down, then I think that'll be something our board of directors will have to take a look at.
I understand Commissioner May's concerns about $2.5 million deficit there. Another way to look at it is if we do spend $2.5 million this coming year, we will have done a lot. And another way to look at it, yeah, it might be concerning as far as a long-term trend, but also if we do that, if we stimulate that much economic development, new housing, I would consider that possibly a success to spend that much money in 1 year, because we would have accomplished a lot.
And I truly believe that it's more of an investment. One of the things that, and I'll be quite honest, in 11 years I've been here, one of the concerns I've had is that the economic development efforts that we've put together, as good as they are, we have not got our return on investment as we would have 15, 20 years ago. And they're all related back to quality of life issues. When you bring in a company that has 125 people, like 9 Energy has, that's a big deal. But about a third of them live in Nolan County and the other 2/3 live someplace else. And part of that is because of the housing situation and some other quality of life issues. And we hope that this will turn the corner to be able to do some good things.
So Ken, the likelihood of spending the total $3.6 million is maybe 50%?
You know, I think it's like Commissioner Peak said, it would be wonderful if we had all the projects, could be done in that next 12 months and spend that money, because then we're in a very positive mode and things are happening. I don't expect that to happen that quick, because some of this stuff is just gonna take not only time from our point of view to put together some good programs, it's reaching out there and marketing and finding those people that wanna partner with us to come in. When your economy is as good as it is, they're working wherever they're at and they don't need any more work. So we gotta be able to find the right program that helps someone, that will incentivize them to come here and help us.
Thank you.
You bet.
Move approval of the seed budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approved. Public input. Anyone wish to speak? A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We've spoken now.
All in favor?
Aye.